glad you're here. Today is going to be a day that I believe you'll be really happy that you came to church. And you might, you might do a little self-examination in the process, but I think that's a good thing too. We have 5 different leaders of Celebrate Recovery that are doing an outstanding job. And today, over the next 5 months, we're going to have each of those leaders to give a brief testimony. And I say brief because typically speaking, if you try to summarize the things in your life, even into an hour, that's brief in the sense of telling your story. If you got a before and an after. Today, we're really calling it the Reader's Digest version. So it's a much smaller piece than that. But today we have Drew Pye, who's going to come and share and tell us a little bit of a story. And I'm not going to get into those details, but I will say I was able to be at his 4-year celebration of sobriety in the last a few months ago. And what a tremendous blessing to see the impact and influence that his recovery is having on many, many other people. And I want to also say this before he comes. We of the 5 people who are going to be sharing over the next 5 months, 3 of those individuals are people who have had addiction issues. Drew is one of those, and he'll tell you about that and however he chooses to. 2 of the others are not necessarily those who've had addiction issues, but they have had other kinds of challenges, and they are married to people who have addiction issues. And so but what I want to say is this: Celebrate Recovery is for people who have addiction issues, but it is also one of the statements that we use often it is for anybody with hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Now, some people, the habits, when they get out of control, it's almost like sometimes, and that's like a given. But the hurts, let me ask you this, and you don't have to raise your hand or anything, I'm not asking, but do you honestly believe it's possible to go through life without accumulating some hurts in your life? I don't think so. And sometimes people deal with those very well, but sometimes you don't. And if you don't, Celebrate Recovery. If you haven't yet, or those are still unresolved, Celebrate Recovery is a very good place, very safe place to come and deal with that. Also, if you have any hang-ups, and most of us have some hang-ups, some things we're having trouble getting past, getting over, getting around. And it's a wonderful place to come and look at those things as well. So I'm going to ask you to welcome Drew up to the stage. Come on, Drew, and let's listen up.
All right, like Pastor Rod said, my name's Drew. I am an addict. I say that with pride. I'm very proud of the fact of the life that I've lived, the hurts that I've gone through. I don't want to say I'm happy for the damage I've caused, because I'm not, but it's part of my story, and my story gives me the strength that I have today. I'd like to start off with praying real quick, please. Lord, thank you for giving me the opportunity to just give my story and show how you've worked in it. I pray that you'll soften hearts today, maybe plant some seeds, and I pray that you'll help my nerves and help calm me as I speak, and speak through me. In your name, amen. All right, well, I've been thinking, what I was going to talk about when I get up here, and it's nothing real elaborate. I'm just going to be honest and tell you my story. I'd like to start by saying there may be some younger people in here, so if I speak a little bit frank, I don't mean to take light of drug use. I don't mean to take light of things I've done, but I can't walk around dreading it all. It is my past, and it's a very serious thing. I've buried a lot of people. One thing you learn early in the program is that you have to step over the bodies to survive, and that's the truth. So it's a very serious thing that I deal with, and so I don't take it lightly, but it is things that I've done. So it won't be R-rated or anything like that, of course. I was born here. I was born in Augusta to a good family. My father's in the restaurant business, and at a very young age, to start by saying, I kind of felt different than most people. I felt weird in my skin. I didn't feel like I belonged all the way. My very first memories was being molested. It lasted until I was probably 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there. I don't know the exact age, but it's the first memories I have. It was a family member, and that shaped the rest of my life, to be honest with you. It shaped just how I deal with people, how I deal with intimacy, love, sex, relationships, how I feel about myself, how I feel about the world around me. It was a huge deal for a lot of my life. It's not as big of a deal anymore, to be honest with you. I feel like I've kind of put it in the right place. It's part of my past, it's part of my story, it's part of my strength, and it is what it is. So I dealt with feelings that most children shouldn't have to deal with at such an early age. Neglect, feeling like I wasn't good enough for somebody, wanting someone to love me in a way that I really wasn't ready to handle. And those were the beginning years of my life. Drugs and alcohol didn't come into my life until much later. Anyway, I really didn't get into, I guess my first memory of really feeling different, and that's what I've done my whole life, is trying to feel different. I was probably 12 years old, 11 years old, and I got in a fight. And I beat the brakes off this kid that was supposed to be a really tough guy in the neighborhood. I wasn't in a real tough neighborhood or anything like that, but in my neighborhood. And what I got from that, as soon as I got done, I felt remorse, I felt shame, I felt like it's probably something I shouldn't have done. But what I got from my friends was an attaboy, you know, respect. It made me feel loved, it made me feel good. So growing up, that was a big part of my life as well. I dealt with things in the wrong way. And then the first time I ever drank alcohol, I was my senior year in high school. I tried Zimas and little stuff like that. I don't know if y'all remember Zimas, but anyway, I drank little things here and there when I was younger. They didn't really do a whole lot for me. I don't know if they did anything for anyone, but my high school prom, my senior year prom, I got drunk. And the feeling that I got from alcohol, it was, man, it fixed me. It made me feel right. It made me feel normal. I could talk to you. I wasn't worried about what you thought of me. I wasn't worried. I wasn't scared. I've been scared my whole life. My entire growing up, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of everyone. You know, and when I drank alcohol, it worked. It did what it was supposed to do. And I felt whole. A few years later, I went to college, and my first drug I ever did was LSD. And most people don't start that heavy, but I decided to jump right into psychedelics and did that for a better part of a year, and it had the same result. I fell in love with it, started moving to other things. Drugs and alcohol worked for me until they stopped working. And what I mean by that is it helped me deal with the pain inside, a hole so big I didn't know how to feel. It made me feel complete until it stopped working. And that is a horrible feeling when the drugs stop working, because they stop working after a while. Now, I'd gone to church when I was young. I did not believe in God. I think I probably did as a young child. I think most do. I'd kind of gotten too smart for all that when I got to school, and just didn't believe in God at all. And anyhow, I went through school though. I'm gonna make this the quickest version I can make it. I went through school, did pretty good. It was Dean's List. Finished in 5 years, 5.5 years, something like that. My entire first year of college, I got 10 hours. That was a quarter system, so that means I got 2 classes. One of those was intro to college. So I did a lot of partying my first year of school. I made up, I guess, for what I had missed before, or I felt like I had missed before. Anyhow, when I got out of school, I'd met a girl in college. We'd gotten married right after school. And my drug use went from having a good time, being able to, outdrink people, stuff like that, which was a big deal to me, to I started using cocaine. And when I first started using cocaine, that changed everything for me. It went from being something that I had fun with to being something that I obsessed over all the time, thought about every day, and used as much as I could. And I met my wife actually during this time, my wife now. I was married to someone else when we met. That obviously didn't work out. She would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be gone. And that's no way to start a marriage. Anyhow, sometime right before I got married, the first time I'd gone to my first drug counseling rehab place, and it's a pretty good place. Somehow I've got my wife to fall in love with me in that. I was not this man that I am today by any means. I was definitely a junkie and acted like it at all times. I guess she saw something that others didn't see. Now, she partied with me a little bit too. I'm not going to tell her story up here, but it was a mutual thing for a little bit. But I think she saw pretty early on that I was a train wreck, and she stopped, and I couldn't stop. There's no way. It's funny, the pain. It's not funny. I shouldn't say that. It's the pain that I felt. You can shave without looking at yourself in the mirror. And I did that for many years. I couldn't stand who I was. I couldn't stand who I was becoming. I see that in this room sometimes. There's people in this room that I know are stuck in addiction. And it's easy to see in their eyes because those are my eyes. I've seen it many times. Even through that, I'd have fought you tooth and nail to keep the way of life that I had. And I did for many, many years. But I met my wife, Christina, and I went to my first real long-term type rehab place in Warrior, Alabama, and a place called Bradford. And I went there and read in the AA book, we call it the Big Book, read about the disease, the allergy of alcoholism. I read the disease concept. And for the first time in my life, it felt like something kind of fit. When someone else drinks alcohol, they don't break out in handcuffs, Someone else does drugs, they don't go missing for a while. I react different to drugs and alcohol. It's just a makeup that I have. I used it for years as a medicine, and like I've said, to kill my pain, and it killed it for many years. It worked. It was my best friend. It was my lover. It was all those things that I held dear was wrapped up in drugs and alcohol. When I read that in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we call it, it fit. If the description fit me. It's the first chapter in the book called The Doctor's Opinion, and it fit. Didn't get cured or anything. I thought that's how this worked for a while, but knowledge doesn't cure you. So anyhow, I got out, got a divorce from my first wife. About a month later, I married Christina. It's not the best way to start a marriage, but it's our story, and I wouldn't change a bit of it. But we had Zachary. He was living with us. I was in and out of rehabs over the next 15 years. I've been to 9 rehab facilities. I've been to psych wards. When they tell you to take your shoestrings and your belt off, you're not about to go into a nice place. And psych. And I went to Aiken Regional, and I would suggest if you have a chance, don't ever go there. The food sucks. They have no salt. They won't let you use salt, no caffeine. But anyway, I've been in and out of many things. I've been told that I have a hole inside of me that it was only God-sized. And that stunk for me because I didn't believe in God. In AA, which is a program I believe in very much. But it says to find a God of your understanding. So there was one time, I'll end the drunk-a-lot kind of quick. I put my wife through many years of hell on earth with me. I stood on the front porch of our apartment, and she told me it's either me or the drugs. And it's always the drugs. That's always going to be it for me. I mean, there's no, if I'm on it, it's the drugs. So I left. She has to sleep on the couch next to me to make sure I don't leave. Many broken promises, oh man, I've put my children in danger. It's been bad on her. December 26th, 2013, I woke up day after Christmas with probably the worst withdrawals I've ever gone through. I've been to rehab for cocaine, for meth, for opiates. If it changes how you feel, I'm down. And so anyway, I was on opiates pretty hard at this time, about 600 milligrams a day of Percocet. And I was out. My son had a surgery, Brendan, and he had some liquid Demerol or something like that in the cabinet. And I had 45 milligrams in that, so I drank that. I woke up next to my wife, tried to go outside and smoke a cigarette, and couldn't hardly get the cigarette to my mouth. I can't explain to you what withdrawals feel like. You can survive through them, but they're really terrible. I lay back down next to Christina and I prayed to a God that I did not believe in, and I asked for him to somehow help me. I asked for him to somehow let my wife see what I was doing and me to tell her, because that is when you're trying to get better, that's the worst thing you want to do. You want help, you want to change, you want to be something different, but you don't want to change, you don't want help, you don't want anything different. It's the hardest thing to explain to someone who's never been there. But anyhow, I got sick. I decided, you know what, I'm going to toughen up a little bit. I got up, snorted the 45 milligrams that I had left, and I went to the bank to steal some money. Well, she had gotten up, and I was sitting there at the bank trying to do this check thing that I did sometimes. And I was sitting there, and she shot me a text, and she said, "I found you Suboxone." While I was sick, I had fallen over the side of the bed, puking, and my wallet had fallen. And if you don't know what Suboxone is, it's something they use to help you come off of stuff. Addicts use it to get to the next fix. Anyhow, she had seen that, and that was an answered prayer that I didn't want answered in that sense. But I came home, and I told her, I walked in the door. Cole, the little curly-haired boy you see running around, doesn't listen very well. He was about 3 months old at this time. And she had him in her arms, and she was trying to put him to sleep. And, of course, she was upset. I walked in the house, and I said, "I'm sorry." And she said, "How long have you been using?" And I told her, I don't remember what I told her, a certain amount of time. She said, "So the whole time he's been born still, huh?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Get out." I said, "Baby, I'll go to rehab." She said, "I don't care where you go. You're getting out of this house." And so I know I've told this before, but I'd already, I'm kind of a manly man. So I'd always said, this is my house. If my wife ever tells me, yes, she can get well, she told me to leave, and I said, "Yes, ma'am." And I left. And I went back to Bradford. I went back to Warrior, Alabama. Second time I'd been at that location. And I sat in rehab, and I felt so incredibly hopeless, so incredibly crushed. I just knew for a fact that sobriety, it just wasn't for me. Recovery was not for me. It was for other people. It was something that I wasn't going to be able to do. And I knew I had to do something different, but I didn't know what to do. I'd been going to AA for years. I'd been in and out of the rooms. I've had sponsors. I've worked the steps. I'd done all those things I was told to do to the best of my ability at that time, but I always took my will back. I always picked up, acted like I could handle it, like I was cured. And I'm not. So I sat in rehab not knowing how I was going to ever get out of this hole. And I opened up the big book, and it said, there's a story in the back, and it said, basically, who are you to say there is no God? I knew I had to find a spiritual part of this program. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous and Recovery is spiritually based. And I couldn't find the spiritual part because I couldn't believe in hocus pocus. And that's just how I saw it. And so when I read that part, though, I said, okay, who am I to say there is no God? I don't believe in him, but what do I need to do? I was willing to do anything it took to try to change who I was. You know, they say if you want to get sober, you only have to change one thing, and that's absolutely everything. And so I got out of rehab. Christina let me back in the house, thank God. I know for a fact that she did not trust me. I've had many drug tests administered on me, and I don't blame her. We got one sitting, I've been sober over 4 years now. I got a drug test sitting in the bathroom right now just in case she ever wants to pop it on me. But I had to find God, and so what I did was I started looking where I thought God might be. I came here. We came to this church. I was probably 18 days sober, something like that, 20 days sober. I came in this church, and we've been here every Sunday since. We had tried other churches before I got sober because I always knew that this was a good way to live. I always knew that this was the right way to be. You know, this is a good way to raise my children. It just wasn't for me. And but anyhow, so I came in this church. I came here. I used to work out with Mike Holum a long time ago, and I knew he had to celebrate recovery here. I didn't come here for CR. I didn't care anything about going to CR. I was all AA, you know. So that's where, you know, since I knew everything, and my decisions have worked out so well for me so far, I knew the best way to achieve sobriety. So anyhow, but I came in here, and I talked to Pastor Rod, and I told him I didn't believe in God many times in our first conversation because I wanted everybody to understand that I was here searching. I don't want to lie about who I am or where I'm at. So anyway, so I came in, and we were here a few weeks and decided to go to CR, and went on a Thursday night and did the small group. And I sat in that small group, and I said, I am here for my wife. I am not here for me. And that was the truth. And I was because I had found sobriety. I knew that I had to find something to fix her. So she needed some help as well, and that's what CR has offered to her. So we came to CR, and I started using the men in the group, Brandon and Tim, Charlie and Mike. They believed in God. They believed in Jesus Christ. I used their faith for many years. I knew that I knew that they were being honest in their faith. I did not at the time. I used to make fun of Christians before I got here. I used to make fun of all that stuff. And my wife is a Christian and has been our entire marriage. So I'm a keeper, let me tell you. I'd make fun of her for her beliefs. I was not a good man, but you know, this is who I am. So, or who I was. Anyway, I used the group's faith. And throughout this time, I'd met Tyler Pageant, and we started kind of talking on a level that I could talk to someone in AA on, and we started talking about God. And, you know, I was told early on that it was okay that I didn't believe in God, to just keep coming back. Well, I was told that in AA too. You know, it's okay if I'm not sober, just keep coming back. I kept coming back. I went on a men's fishing trip, and Brandon told me to be specific when I prayed and tell God to prove himself to me. And so I did. I have learned a long time ago that the best thing for me to do is what I'm told. I have been obedient since I've gotten out of rehab on what I felt were the right men in my life, and I followed their direction. Some are in AA, some are in this church. But I did. Tim was running the fishing trip, and he told us all that we had to shut up after 7 o'clock one night, and we had to pray. And Tyler Pageant is a troublemaker, and he wasn't shutting up, and we were building fires instead. But anyway, but he said the next day that he wanted us to go by the beach and pray, read the Bible, and have some quiet time with God. So I did. I went out there, and I said, all right, I'll take Brandon's advice. And I said, God, if you are real, prove it to me, because I don't believe you're real. I need some kind of proof. I need something to show me that you are really there. And I prayed. I stood out there for a couple minutes, and then I walked inside the house, and it was a duplex, so there was people we didn't know on one side, and we were on the other side. And there's a man standing outside looking at the beach that I didn't know. He was from somewhere else. And he looked at me and he said, can you believe there are actually some people that don't believe in God? And I'm like, yeah, that's hard to believe. You would think that'd be enough, but it wasn't. But these were all pieces to my puzzle. These were all seeds that were planted. You know, we talk about discernment. I think that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. I had to water certain flowers that I wanted to grow and let the others die. And these were the flowers I was watering. These were the doors I was going through. My way of living wasn't working, so I started doing something different. You know, something you hear if you come into the rooms of recovery is talking about insanity. And insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Well, that was me to a T. I just could always handle it this weekend. I never was stupid enough to only buy enough for a day. It was for the weekend. I could do it this weekend. I could actually make it through. And I've never started using drugs without rehab to stop me. So anyhow, I found God at this church. CR saved my marriage and AA saved my life. I truly believe those three things. I went to a men's retreat and Trace Diaz, and I was in there with Mike Holum and my sponsor in AA, and I prayed that God would come into my life, and I prayed that, and I don't know how much I had faith at the time. I know I had faith, and I know that I had faith that this stuff worked for you. I don't know that I had faith that it worked for me yet. But I knew it worked for you. I just knew it. You know, I saw it. I felt it. I talked about it. I did everything I was supposed to do. I wasn't a Christian. I'm reading the Bible more than most Christians. I was going to church every Sunday. I was going to CR every Thursday. I was talking about God. And I was, you know, I was doing everything except the faith part. But this is what I wanted, man. This is what I wanted. I just wanted a different life. I wanted to, all I ever wanted was to be a good father and be a good husband, be a good man. And, man, I'd lock my kids in my truck while I was buying drugs. And then, you know, I was definitely not being a good man. I wasn't being a good father. So when I accepted God in my life, I don't want to say it was a boom change, because I don't know that it was, but it was a change. It's different. I think Christina would tell you. I haven't made fun of her since. You know, people would say people were saved by God, and I'd say, what about the doctors? You know, you know, the $2 million a year doctor right there, he didn't do nothing. Well, now I can see the other part, and it took a long time for me to get that. But the small group of CR is where I started breaking down these chains. It really is. It's where I started being able to understand who I was and what I was, and I'm a good man. I'm a good father and I'm a good husband as long as I'm obedient and I do what I'm supposed to do. As soon as I start making the decisions of taking the wheel again, I go to rehab. I've proven it myself. So some people like to say they're no longer an addict. I would never say that, not in a million years. I'm very proud of my story. It's the strength that I have. There's only one reason for me to destroy so much, to burn down so many bridges, to hurt my wife and children so many times. And that is so I could stand somewhere someday, tell someone my story, and it might help them. And that's it. That's my purpose in life. So I take that very serious. I go to a meeting every single day. I don't skip. I didn't stop using drugs one moment, so I don't skip meetings. Every day, I'm 7 o'clock a.m. I go to my AA meeting. I'm here every Thursday night. And I've been doing it for almost 4.5 years now, and it's worked. So I'm not changing the recipe at all. But anyway, I appreciate y'all listening to me. If you ever got some change you want to break and want to work on something, Thursday nights is a good place to start. But anyhow, that's it. Thank you.
If you need to be honest about anything in your life, I've found that people like Drew, and there's others here, are the best people in the world for you to turn to. Because I think one of the greatest fears most of us have is fear of being known, and the fear that people will know something bad about us. And what I've found with particularly a core group of our leaders in Celebrate Recovery is that they found that the greatest healing comes by being honest about the problems we have and truly allowing God to heal. I've observed Drew in these last 4.5 years or in this process, and I've had a few people along the way just because partly the kind of church we are and the mission that we have to reach spiritually unresolved people, and to focus on some things like CR that over the years I've had people like Drew without a doubt, but I don't know if I've met anybody any more honest than Drew. And I do remember our breakfast together, and he wanted to absolutely make sure I knew he didn't believe in God. I mean, it was like that was his most important thing he wanted to get through to me that morning. And what I wanted him to know was that actually was very exciting to me. Not because I like that people don't believe in God, but that means we're on mission, we're on task. Because Drew's a big guy, but I've seen a few other big guys fall on their face before God. And what I find true is this: if someone is an honest person and they're honestly seeking God, they'll always find him. They'll always find him. Some people talk a lot about a God and talk about wanting help and wanting this and whatever, but whenever you honestly seek God with all your heart, the scripture bears it out, we will find him. He'll be found. He's not hiding from us. And even if you're a follower of God, even if you're a follower of Christ, and you're going through a hard time, a difficult time, and you're thinking, where is God? He's close. The Bible says he's close to those who are brokenhearted. He's close to those who are going through hard times. And so sometimes we just overlook him. And so thank you, Drew. Thank you. I think most of you know I'm pretty cautious about who I let stand up here and speak to you as a congregation. And so I don't lightheartedly do that. And, in Drew's first year, I wouldn't have had him, even though I liked him and I saw good things going on, he wouldn't have been standing here doing this, But I can tell you, through God's power, this is a changed man. And I would just like to encourage you, if there's anybody who's, oftentimes what I find is if you're struggling with any kind of a issue, anything related to anything Drew is dealing with, you're really better to go talk to them than to come to me, because that story has not been my story. And so sometimes these guys help me a lot, and they help me understand things. So I want to strongly encourage you, if you have, Drew's very open. There are people who call him every week. Some of them try to call him probably every day. There are people just when you get to a certain point in your recovery and you start paying back, you start helping other people, what happens is people start coming to you. That's happening with Drew right now. People are turning to him. People are coming to him. And so I want you to feel very comfortable. He's a big guy and he's strong, but he doesn't hit that hard. No, and he is an MMA fighter, but he's also a teddy bear. He's a gentleman. And so if there's any issue, I will say this, and that is, if you're only playing around with recovery, Drew might not be the person you want to talk to. Not because he wouldn't love you nice, but he will tell you, and he can pick it up pretty quickly. But if you want help, what a wonderful opportunity. And he's not the only one, but there are others. But I just want to tell you, feel comfortable to pull him aside and just say, hey, I'd like to call you. I'd like to talk to you. And it could be about somebody that you love, somebody that you know. I've found these guys to be amazingly helpful for family members who are going through a difficult time with someone, because oftentimes we don't know what to do. And so thanks, Drew. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your honesty. What a blessing. What I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to introduce you to what I'm going to share next week. Okay? And the sermon title today is You Choose Doors. You choose the doors. And what I'm going to ask you to do in your preparation for next Sunday is to read Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs chapter 8 is wisdom's call. Now, there's a sheet beside you can take with you There's also, you obviously you open the Bible, you use your Bible app, however, what works for you. But what I want to kind of pique your interest with is this, and I want you to come back next week because I want to talk about this. And we have enough room in our sermon schedule for us to do this and still fit in the closing sermon of this series before Mother's Day. And so this is going to work out well. But I want you to particularly look at verse 34. It's a memory verse on your sheet. And it says this: "Blessed are those who listen to me." Now, wisdom, we went ahead and inserted and asked him to go ahead and insert that word in there. Word isn't there in the text, but it's implied because this is wisdom speaking. The whole chapter is wisdom speaking. There's kind of a contrast. There's in chapter 7, the adulteress is calling out and wooing men away from the faithfulness. And there's a lot of things. It's not just adultery. There's a lot of things that do that to all of us in our lives, that woo us away from the path of wisdom. And so this is a contrast chapter 8. Now, and now we're hearing the voice of wisdom. And the voice of wisdom is really God's voice. It's his voice. And you'll see some parallels in the Proverbs when you're reading the voice of wisdom. And you'll see parallels to many things that Jesus said, that he taught. You'll see the wisdom there. But what I want you to notice in this verse 34 is, "Blessed are those who listen to wisdom, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway." And so what happens here, what I'm wanting to kind of set us up for is this, and that is that in your life, as we talked about on the first Sunday of the series, or the second Sunday it was actually, that there are many, many doors of opportunity. You know, whenever you look at the garden where Adam and Eve were, one tree they could not eat from. And then there were all the other trees that they could. God has given us many, many opportunities. So whenever we have so many opportunities before us, and there's so many doorways to walk through, how do we choose the right doors? It's not a matter always, because sometimes we think, well, we know, and I mentioned the 3 doors we should avoid. And that is the door of temptation. You know, if you find yourself hanging out again at the door of temptation, you know if you stay there long enough, you're going to eat the apple. You're going to walk through the door. So stay away from the door of temptation. When you sense you're near the door of temptation, you need to go in another direction. Also, the door of deception. The door of deception. Satan was able to deceive Adam and Eve because he twisted what God said. And they weren't confident in what God said, so they were deceived. They walked through the door of deceit. And then the other door is a door of rebellion. And that's where we just openly go ahead and do it our own way. There was a part of Drew's life, obviously, he was running through that door of rebellion. Just, I'm going to do it my way. And everybody has been there. Everybody has done that. But that's a doorway that we should keep closed. But then we have all these opportunities. So how do we know what doors to walk through? And so that's really what we're going to talk about next week, listening to the voice of wisdom. You want to prepare yourselves, memorize that verse 34. Go ahead and memorize it this week, and then read through this chapter a few times this week and prepare yourself for some of the things we're going to share next week in the message. I'm going to ask us to bow our heads.